Shalom Aleichem, everyone. As we begin Be'ezrat Hashem, Sefer Bereishit, Parashat Bereishit this week. We started off this year with a lot of hope that things were going to get better. But we see the Midat HaDin coming on us. It's so important that we remember to pray and to learn and beseech Hashem to shine upon us once again the Midat HaRahamim, so we can see things getting better very soon for everyone. And Be'ezrat Hashem, we should see the coming of Mashiach. B'mheir b'yameinu, amen. We're starting again Parashat Bereishit, and people ask every year again Bereishit, again Torah. We just finished it, starting it again. The Simchat Torah, this past Simchat Torah, I stayed by my brother's house, Rabbi Gabriel Shemunov in Pomona, New York. And between Mincha and Aravit on Simchat Torah, they asked me to say a few words. And I came across this beautiful story in the Sefer Alon Aleh by Rav Zev Smith Shlita. He brings the story what happened with the granddaughter of the Hafetz Chaim. The granddaughter of the Hafetz Chaim got swallowed up into the times that she was living in, the Haskalah movement, the Enlightenment movement. She got washed up in it, mixed up in it, and she became a staunch believer that the Torah was outdated and that man and science and technology, that was the wave of the future. And so when she was studying university near Radin, near her grandfather's house, she decided to come by and pay him a visit. She came by and she paid him a visit, and she got into a conversation with her grandfather as she saw him sitting and learning. And she said to her grandfather, Zaidi, why do you waste your time learning this old book? Don't you know that science and technology, that's the wave of the future. That's what's going to solve all the problems. That's where you have to be. Why are you wasting your time in this old, silly book? The Hafetz Chaim said to his granddaughter, Yes, science, technology, it's great. They've invented an airplane. And soon, trust me, he says, they'll be able to fly a person to the moon. This is years before they ended up flying a person to the moon. He says, but they're also building bombs. And not any type of bombs. In the future, they'll be able to build bombs that can eradicate cities, countries. Put it on a plane and drop it off. Again, the Hafetz Chaim, in his prophetic vision, was able to see what will happen in the future. And the Hafetz Chaim told his granddaughter, he said, yes, technology is great, but technology and science, with that they create bombs. They make bombs with them to destroy people. Und Torah machen Menschen. But Torah makes people. Torah makes a person to behave better, a person to act better, a person to feel for another person, how to behave, how to live, how to see Hashem, how to be kind. That's in the Torah. That's not in science and that's not in technology. And so it's so important for us to put that in mind as we begin Sefer Bereishit and as we begin the Torah again. How can we learn from the Torah to better ourselves, to better Amidot, to better the way we behave, the way we have our relationships with our family, with our spouses, with our friends, with our children. And Be'ezrat Hashem, this is the goal with the Koach of Hashem that we can set for us as we begin the journey of learning the Torah and its secrets and its lessons so we can apply them to our lives. In this week's parasha, we come to the famous pasuk, the pasuk that tells us that Hashem looked at Adam HaRishon, he looked at Adam, and he said to him, it is not good for man to be alone. I will create an Ezer Kenegdo. I will create a helper opposite him. The word Kenegdo we translated as opposite him. It can even mean against him. Rashi brings from a Gemara in Yevamot. Rashi there says that there is no middle ground in relationships. If one merits if one is good, then his spouse will be a helper to him. And if one does not merit it, one is not good, then the spouse is kenegdo hashalom, is against him. Vayomer Hashem Elokim lo tov hiyot ha'adam levado eseh lo ezer kenegdo. Now the word kenegdo can be a negative connotation, but being opposite someone doesn't necessarily have to be negative. So why doesn't the Torah just keep it as helper? Why does the Torah have to specifically say kenegdo? Rav Mordechai Kavanetsky shares a beautiful story that happened that explains this. It was baseball season, and the husband at home wanted to watch every game, rewatch the game, listen to the commentaries on ESPN about the games. And so every night he would sit down and put on the television to watch his sports. But the wife, she didn't want to watch it. They went together to counseling, and the wife complained. She said, all day my husband just wants to watch playoffs, wants baseball, he wants to watch sport commentary. That's all he's interested in. Yankees, schmankies. That's all he wants to do every night. The doctor, the psychologist said, yeah, that seems to be a problem. It happens in a lot of households in America. It's not only your problem. The counselor wanted the husband to talk, maybe defend himself, say it's once a year, it's only during the season. But instead, the husband put his hands up in the air and said, but what about her? All she wants to do every night is watch sitcoms and serials, and she wants to watch meaningless fantasies. How can she expect me, a real man, to sit and watch all these fantasies? I want to see real people working for their living, playing ball. The therapist thought about this for a second and said, well, we seem to have a huge problem here. But I have a solution, he says. Smiling broadly, he says to them, you guys have a large home, right? They say, yeah. You have multiple rooms. He says, yeah. They say, his therapist said, so I have a great idea. Get 2 flat screens. Get one more flat screen. Put it up. She's going to watch her sitcoms, and you watch your sports. As soon as he finished this, the couple stared at him in horror. They said, different rooms? How can we watch in different rooms? That's the time. That's our time that we spend together. We have to spend it together. That's our couple time. The Torah does more than warn us of this problem. The Torah tells us what the best helper is. An Ezer Kenegdo, a spouse, is not someone who's just in the same room with different interests and no concern for the other. They're just sitting there together. Rather, it's one who stands opposite the spouse and faces him. Their shared enjoyment of each other's company. They see each other face to face because they're sitting opposite each other. They're spending time with each other. It's not being together if your eyes are glued to something else. Being together means you're spending time with each other. Kenegdo. The Torah wants two sets of eyes facing each other. Sometimes in agreement, sometimes in disagreement. But as long as they're opposite each other. I would like to add, the Rav Avigdor Miller would always say, a husband and wife, they're opposite each other because life is full of heavy difficulties and challenges. In the same way you have a heavy box, and the only way to carry that heavy box is if two people, one from both opposite sides, pick it up together and walk. That is marriage. Ezer Kenegdo, together, facing each other, opposite each other, picking up the difficulties of life and working together with it. Oh, what an important concept, especially for our times. To be able to face one each other, spend time together with each other, not with something else in between. And together get through life. Agree, disagree, come to a conclusion, and work together to make it the best possible situation for all. Let's move on to another Dvar Torah from this week's parasha. In this week's parasha, we have the Nachash who comes to Chava and he tells her to eat from the fruit of the tree in the center of the garden. And Chava says, if you eat it, you'll die. Yomer hanochash el ha'isha lo motu motu. No, you're not going to die. Don't worry about it. The Nachash came to work on Chava, the Yetzer Hara, the Satan. The question that glares at us is, when the Nachash came to Chava, where was Adam HaRishon? What was he doing? The world was just created. Where did he go? What did he go do? Chava was the last of the creations. One would expect Adam to spend some time with his wife. Chazal asked this question. They have various replies. One answer that's given is that Adam went for a nap. Now remember, Adam's nap is not like our naps, 3, 4, 5 hours. Adam HaRishon, who gave 7 of his years to David HaMelech. David HaMelech, when he slept for such short periods of time. Adam HaRishon, the handiwork of Hashem, the heavenly angels mistook him for a celestial creation. They were going to sing Shirat to him. He was on a different level. Obviously, his sleep wasn't a 8-hour sleep, 3 hours sleep. And Rav Zaitchik learns from here. Rav Chaim Zaitchik Zecher Tzadik Bracha learns. A rega, a short nap, a short moment can make all the difference between acquiring eternal light or losing it, causing darkness to come in yourself and all future generations. So much can be done in a moment. In a moment, everything is a difference. One moment can make a difference in life and death. It's one moment, a rega, a small little moment between Shabbat and when it's not Shabbat. When it's not Shabbat and when it becomes Shabbat. It's all a moment. Shchita, a small little change, one little thing makes a huge difference. Going one step into the boundary of one country from another makes a huge difference. A slight deviation can mean the beginning of an altered view, a changed relationship, a turning away from a Torah life. It all begins that one moment. It's so important for us to recognize this one moment. The Gemara tells us there was a rabbi who would not remove his hand from his pocket. He always kept it in his pocket, on his money, his hand on his money. His reason was, if a poor person comes to him, he didn't want to waste time giving him tzedakah, going and digging out for the money. He wanted to have the money in his hand so he could right away give tzedakah. He didn't want to waste someone's time. He didn't want to waste his chance from doing a mitzvah. He didn't want to embarrass the person to wait longer for him. A moment makes all the difference. Habaya tells us Adam Arishon went for a nap at the wrong time, and how the consequences paid out because of that. A person needs to use every moment. You'll hear people tell you all the time, this was the moment that changed my life. This caused me to do this. This made me change that. That conversation I had, this, that. A moment can make a huge difference. The Hafetz Chaim in the yeshiva of Radin, the Rosh Yeshiva of Naftali Trop, Zeichat Tzadik Lebracha, got very sick. He was very ill. And the students of the yeshiva were praying for him. And it wasn't getting better. So students decided that they were going to donate a part of their life to the Rebbe, to their Rosh Yeshiva. One pledged to give a day of his life, another a few days, another week. Everybody wanted the Rosh Yeshiva to live longer. And they made pledges. Please Hashem, take an hour of ours for the take a day for the Rosh Yeshiva. They came to the Hafetz Chaim to join in their donation campaign and giving time of their own time to them, to the Rosh Yeshiva. When they asked the Hafetz Chaim this, Hafetz Chaim sat down. He started to make an accounting of the time he had expended to determine how much he could spare. He thought long and hard, and the students stared in awe while he seemed to wrestle with himself for a number. Suddenly he turned to them and said, I'll give you one moment. They were startled and shocked. How could you just give one moment to the Rosh Yeshiva? The Hafetz Chaim explained. He said, every moment is so important, and there's so much to do. How can I just give it away? One moment of life was an eternity. It's invaluable. It's a gift from God. How can I just squander it? How can I just give it away? People realized the importance of a moment. The yeshiva changed. People started learning with greater depth and greater diligence. They saw from the Hafetz Chaim how every moment counts. We must make the most of every moment. We don't know how many moments we have left. We know the moment that we're in, it is crucial to be there. Not to nap, but to be there. Not to space out, but to be actively there, actively listening, actively present. And Be'ezrat Hashem, we should find that moment that helps us achieve the greatest gifts that we can, coming closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, being kinder to people. Let's go to the last lesson for this week's parasha. In the fourth parak, the seventh pasuk, the Torah tells us, sin rests at the door. Desire is toward you, yet you can conquer it. Halo, as the pasuk says, "Lapeta hatat rovetz ve'elecha teshukato ve'ata timshol bo." Sin is crouching at the door, lusts after you, but you can dominate it. Herein lies the folly of man. The Yetzer Hara is constantly on guard, always looking for ways to incite us into sin. Man doesn't need to succumb to the Yetzer Hara. He can win if he wants to. If he wants to. If you want, you will prevail. It's all up to us. Do we really want to succeed? If our desire for success is there, then we can get there. Harav Eliyahu Lapian Zeichat Tzadik Lebracha came one time to visit his good friend Harav Yecheskel Levenstein Zeichat Tzadik Lebracha, who was the Mashgiach at Panovich. Rav Chatzkel was very happy to see Rav Eliyahu. And he asked Rav Eliyahu Lapion to give a shmuz, an ethical discourse to the students of Panovich. And Rav Eliyahu began his lecture with an incident that took place 30 years earlier in a small town in Lithuania. The population, the Goyish population, they were very anti-Semitic. And they wanted to do something, to start a pogrom, to kill Jews. Now there was laws and there was courts, and they couldn't just go over and just start a mob. So they needed to find a pretext. And so they did what they do best. One of their own murdered a young Gentile child and threw the body into the back of a town shul. And then the police showed up and they found it. And word spread rapidly throughout both the Jewish and non-Jewish communities. And the Goyim were so upset, rightfully so. But they had to go through the courts, through the police, through their investigations. In those days, the advanced criminal investigation science was that they use a special dog. The authorities claimed that the dog was very gifted. He was able to smell the dead body, and then he would walk over to the murderer. Special dog. And since they want to figure out who killed this boy, they were going to use this dog. And they were going to do it tomorrow morning, as it's late at night now. The whole entire Jewish community packed into the shuls. They were davening to Hashem. How could one rely on a dog? What if the dog was mistaken? How could they put a test to this and put our lives on such a weird way of testing? The next morning, the entire town gathered to the town square. The Goyim were happy and excited, and the Jews were fearful as they came. They brought the deceased child to the town square. The dog took a few sniffs, and he started to walk around the people. And it stopped suddenly at one of the town's Gentile hooligans, who, after some convincing by the authorities, confessed that he actually killed the child. This guy was taken away to jail, and the Jews let out a sigh of relief. They went to shul happy, crying tears of joy to thank Hashem for saving them. Rav Eliyahu concluded the story, and he asked the students, let me ask you, this dog, what kind of olam haba, what kind of heavenly reward did this dog get for saving an entire Jewish community? Did he receive a doghouse made of gold with the finest dog food? Clearly not. Rav Eliyahu said the dog received nothing. Why? Because he did nothing. He has no bechira. He has no free will. He has no ability to choose right over wrong. He was compelled to act truthfully. He acted according to his nature. For that there is no reward. Rav Eliyahu Lapian turned to the students and said, Morai Rabotai, who knows if we are not very much like that dog? Who knows if we are not in fact serving Hashem out of habit, out of nature, second nature, we just do it. Do we really care how we stand in front of Hashem? The Pasuk is teaching us. We make choices, and we live with the consequences of our choices. There are those who choose to be floaters in life, floating from one event to another, from one religious observance, never really caring what they do or say. While it's nice they come to shul. Is that davening? Is that learning the sitting in a shir? We can either tell the Yetzer Hara to get off our case, or we can fall into the Yetzer Hara's hands. It's up to us. Are we humans, beings with common sense, ambition, and resolution, or are we weak and no better than a trained dog? Our actions indicate the path we have chosen. It may be the will of Hashem that we always choose the appropriate course. That we remember the importance of Torah, how it's so important in our lives. It's the only thing that we have that makes a difference in the world. How Be'ezat Hashem, together with our spouse, we'll use the Torah, learn the Torah, to come closer to Hashem, become better people, better Jews. How important it is for us to remember that every second counts and to make the most of every minute. And to make sure that we're not living a life of habits, but rather a life of choices. And the choices should be the right choices. With this, I would like to wish everyone a Shabbat Shalom. May we see only good days. May everything get better. We need to learn and daven and ask Hashem to, again, please shine us with the Midat HaRachamim. Bring your mercy upon us. And may we see only good. Be'ezat Hashem. Shabbat Shalom likulam.